Welcome once again to the Radical Imagination Real Talk in the Hamptons. I'm your host, Jim Vredos, and I am so thrilled and blessed to have Dr. Julie Ratner on the show today. Julie is the founder and
co-founder and
co-founder
chair
and
of the
chair
Ellen Hermanson
of the
Foundation.
Ellen Hermanson Foundation. She has been in the area since 1990.
1990,
But
and
more
this is
full-time, the last 3, 4 years?
COVID. I'm a
Yeah.
COVID transplant. I was spending 50% of my time here.
Right,
Then COVID happened, and
absolutely.
my daughter had a baby at the very beginning of COVID, and we were in her tiny apartment. There were four of us, and we decided it would be safer and more comfortable here. So she stayed for 13 months, which was fabulous, right? I got to watch this baby every single day, and I decided I don't need to live in the city full-time anymore, so I don't.
Well, our, our lives have been involved in different ways, although this is the first time we're actually sitting down and talking. But we, in a sense, but we were both at Columbia in 1968.
Correct?
When all kinds of turmoil and protests were going on. You were going to library school of
Right,
library
the
sciences?
spring of 68 was my
68.
senior in college, and I had gotten married. I was at
Right.
Simmons College in Boston.
Right, right.
And I got married, and my husband was at Columbia Law School, so I
Right.
took my last semester at Barnard, though I graduated from Simmons. And it was kind of tricky because, I don't know if you remember, the teachers said you weren't pass-fail, school was shut
Yeah,
down,
I do
there were
remember.
no final exams, and I had to convince Simmons to accept all these pass-fail grades so I could graduate.
Meanwhile, because I was a work-study student, or I was working in the library, Butler
Really?
Hall, when, in fact, they did have books. So you maybe have gone to Butler and checked out a book that I had been filing and so on. Anyway, we go back to that period.
Do you know what's amazing about Butler Hall? When I started graduate school, the School
Yeah.
of Library Science
Right.
at Columbia,
Right,
and I saw the card catalog, there were 800 drawers for the letter S.
great.
And what I was told is, at the time, the card catalog was insured with Lloyd's of London for $20 million. And I thought that was just something that was absolutely astronomical.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and then,
The young kids that are watching this are not gonna know what the heck we're talking about, but yes, there were card catalogs, there were books,
absolutely.
and on a serious note, there was so much going on at that time, protests against war, civil rights, women's rights, and so on.
And the big thing was the gym on Morningside Heights.
Yes,
And
yes.
access to the gym, because it was going to be so limited for the community. And
Right.
that was a problem. It was kind of seen as racist by some people.
Yeah.
And it was a very difficult thing. And I remember the campus, the inside of the campus being ringed by police.
Absolutely.
It was, and I
Well-
skipped my graduation. No, I didn't skip my graduation.
You didn't?
No, it was from graduate school, I skipped my graduation.
Well, we had an alternative graduation with Dick Gregory of all people, who was our speaker. But you're absolutely right, and ringing the campus, and I was a sociologist then, I was studying grad school in sociology, and my curiosity, I was in the buildings that were being taken over, and I did make
You were in Hamilton Hall.
no, that was for the black students. I was in philosophy or something, I think. But we had an option, we had a choice. Cops were gonna come in, or else, that was it. And you had a chance to leave. So I did, but what I wanna get to is your work here, your commitment as an activist, is still tied in to those earlier years that we experienced and our training at a very, very good university, which is under attack now, of course. And as you were saying right before the show, one of the things they're attacking is research in the medical sciences, which you have been very, very, very much involved in with Ellen's run here, and medical research with Southampton, right?
But I want to
Tell us-
clarify.
yeah,
We
clarify
actually
this, sure.
don't do research because it takes so many millions of dollars. And it's on the line here. I'm a member of something called the National Breast Cancer Coalition.
Right.
And they receive a huge amount of money from the Department of Defense of all places. I think it's over $100 million a year. And I would say that's probably on the line right now, given who runs the Department of Defense right now and how little respect there is for medical research and the long-term effects that will affect all of us. My foundation, the Ellen Hermanson Foundation, is about access to care because the research can't even help a woman who doesn't know she needs it. And in this community, it's not really, as you know, the rich and the famous. The backbone of the community are hardworking people who sometimes work 2 and 3 jobs, and they need to have access. And part of when we funded the breast center at Stony Brook Southampton Hospital, we said we have only 2 provisos. 1, no one is denied access because she can't pay, she lacks insurance. And 2, figure out how to make this a warm, unthreatening place so that no woman has to be nervous about here. Marry the rigor of a teaching hospital with the warmth of a community. And so that when someone comes in, you know her name, and she's not just a number here. And I think the breast center has actually achieved that. And so we are all about access to care. And part of that care is having excellent technology and equipment. So we have collaborated and worked closely with the hospital to make sure that the breast center is state-of-the-art. It is commensurate with Memorial Sloan Kettering. It is commensurate with Columbia. It is commensurate with any teaching hospital that we have the latest equipment because women who live here, all of us who are here, deserve it.
Right.
And so we
And
have
those
it.
especially who cannot afford it.
Exactly.
You don't close your doors to them. But again, that's the impact of what's going on in this country will come out here and affect the work that you're trying to do. I understand that the money that you raise through the foundation will stay here and provide the care.
We hope to continue raising the money. Frankly, I'm not quite worried about what this means. Yeah, I mean,
Sure.
people are out of work. The present government is hell-bent on dismantling, it seems to me, so many services, access. And that the tariffs, the stock market has plummeted. I suspect that many people are watching how they spend their money right now because they need to. We all need to. This is a very tumultuous time.
And the rates of illness will increase.
Without a doubt.
Without
a doubt.
So you're going to be perhaps even more overloaded with demand.
I think we will be, not only for breast cancer, all cancer.
Absolutely.
Clinical trials are being halted. Vaccines that have kept us alive and healthy are being halted. And the amount of misinformation is large, is vast. And if I had a wish as an educator, it would be that we would all become readers again and that we would read critically and ask ourselves when we read, do I believe this? Is this true? How do I, what's the research on this? What's the history of this? I don't want us all to be believers of everything that is just told to us.
Which is what the authoritarian state wants to do, to manipulate the media.
Well, and they're manipulating schools. And part of
saying what you should be teaching, what you should not be teaching.
Bravo to Harvard right now for standing up.
Absolutely, and Columbia is beginning to get a backbone too.
They're a little late.
A little late, better late than never, right?
I'm angry at Columbia, truth be told.
I'm sorry?
I'm angry at Columbia,
Well, yeah.
especially Teachers College.
Yeah.
Because
So,
I have my master's degree from there, my doctorate from there. As a preeminent institution of learning, of a specific type of learning, teaching, learning, I think they could be doing much more to grapple with what's happening. If this isn't a teachable moment, what is?
Diane Ravitch graduated, right, or taught there at Teachers College.
She might not have been when I was there.
Right, but she's certainly one of the people that would agree with you. So be specific. What do you think places like the Teachers College can do for our students? And again, how does that impact out here in our beautiful part of the world?
How about being a role model? How about mentoring? How about setting an example? I'm a great proponent of debate, and I haven't done research on this. I would like to see debate. There are people who absolutely believe a narrative about genocide in Gaza, and there are people who absolutely believe that Israel has a right. And I want to honor both narratives at the moment. But what I would say to students is, we need to debate this. Today, you are taking the Palestinian side, and tomorrow you are doing a deep dive into the Israeli side, and vice versa. And so the people,
You're absolutely, Columbia has not done a good job.
and so you
Other
need
places have, like Dartmouth, which is.
you need to know
Yeah,
what
go
you're
ahead.
talking about. And I want to
Yes.
just be honest. In 2018, I spent 10 days on the West Bank,
Yeah.
and it was the most harrowing time. I came home shattered from this experience because I saw human rights abuses every single day. And honestly, I don't know anyone who would live under those conditions where water is rationed. You have to pay for water. You see the gorgeous Israeli settlement that is green and lush and safe, and then you go down and you see the Palestinian settlement, which is arid. The animals are sometimes stolen away.
Yeah.
They have to pay for the water you get, which is never enough.
The olive trees are destroyed.
The olive tree.
Very important.
Who lives that way? Who can, it's not even, it's, I don't know that many of us would accept that as a lifestyle that we would want to live.
Of course not. But again, one of your interests has been, and mine too, I've had them on the show, Combatants for Peace. I think this is what you're trying to get us to
So
see.
that's where I was in the West Bank with
I see.
Combatants for Peace.
I see. And explain a little about that organization and your support for
So
it.
As
As an example of what we can do.
Absolutely, and it's small. And I first heard of Combatants for Peace in April of 2018. I saw that there was going to be a lecture at Teachers College with this group that was bi-national, and I was curious, so I went to the lecture. I listened to the two speakers, one who was Palestinian, one who was Israeli, who had basically been enemies in some way before, who considered themselves
Palestinians
brothers.
were from the Israeli prisons.
Right, so
And the Israeli participants
we're
had
former
served.
soldiers.
Were soldiers, right.
Absolutely.
So
It was a leap of faith. It was
Right.
truly a boundary crossing.
Yeah.
I listened to them. I took their literature. I signed up for their emails. And during the summer, I think I got an email about a trip that was being planned that would be in Israel and in Palestine. And that the two leaders of the trip, one would be Israeli and one would be Palestinian. And I was really curious to go. And I asked all my friends if anyone would go with me, and no one wanted to go, so I went by myself.
Why wouldn't they go? Well, were they closed
busy,
to it?
or they didn't.
I mean, nothing against your
They
friends.
didn't know
but-
any. No. They were busy. Some of them
They're
have
busy.
jobs,
Okay.
and they
all right.
didn't. It just wasn't in their wheelhouse to want to go. And so, but I went, and I remember my daughter called me and said, "Mom, you're going to see things that are going to really upset you." She gave me the name of a lawyer to call in case things got dicey, and things did get dicey on the last day we were there. My sister Ellen spent a lot of time in Israel, and she was 42 when she died, and we were hoping to go to Israel before she died. She had her hip replaced. I cannot tell you how sick she was and what pain she was in.
For about 5 or 6 years.
She was sick for 6 years. It was
How
rough.
how did she come to go to Israel for the first time?
The first time she was a junior at Connecticut College, and she took her junior year. She went to Hebrew University in Jerusalem. My favorite cousins in the entire world live in Jerusalem, and my favorite cousin Judy, her husband Charlie, is a sociologist. He studied with someone amazing whose name eludes me at the moment at Columbia, and he taught
An Israeli or
no, American.
American? Okay.
And he taught he was his dissertation sponsor and advisor at Columbia. And Charlie teaches, and he's quite religious and quite radical at the same time, which I think is what it is to be kind of an observant Jew. And he's 90 now, he goes to all the protests still. And so Ellen went to study at Hebrew University. And she was the kind of person who immersed herself in anything. She spent hours in the old city of Jerusalem. She toured the country. She spoke Hebrew fluently. She was incredibly open-minded. At the time, I would say she was a very strong Zionist. I don't know how she would feel today. I suspect she would have been kind of disgusted and upset with what's going on.
Sure. Well, There is so much to cover here. Again, I'm trying to keep.
Oh, so we want to stay on track? Okay.
No, we're on track, but to steer it toward, again, the Hamptons here. And we, the protests here have been also one-sided. And I feel so strongly that this is, what you're talking about is so needed here. I'm doing a show, actually, 2 weeks from now, with the Israeli professor at Columbia, this historian.
Oh, right.
Avi Shalom, whose class was disrupted in January. And when the protesters came in, he said, sit down, let's talk. Let's hear your narrative, let's hear mine. That's what's needed. Unfortunately, they didn't. They wouldn't do that. And it's not necessarily their fault, but you're right, because the professors aren't helping, the administrators aren't focusing on these
Well, the
sorts of
tone
things.
starts from the top.
Absolutely.
And I think they've been a little MIA, and everyone's so worried about, I don't know what they're worried about, only they could tell you. But,
But what about
and
here?
there's so much pressure.
Right.
So what about here?
Yeah.
So,
What can we do here? To open up people's minds, to have that dialogue, that debate, and to break down the fear. Oh, my goodness.
so much is fear-based,
It is.
and we have a wonderful oncological social worker at the foundation, and unfortunately she's retiring because she's so beloved. She would say that so much of what we see in the world is based on fear, and how does one cope with fear? Yeah. And I want to just backtrack to Combatants for Peace, because what we learned there is your enemy is someone you don't know yet. And we could say that here in terms of all the fear and the misinformation. I guess the first challenge would be to start to talk. And I don't know how we do that. Maybe it's one-on-one, and just say, let me understand how you feel. I'm not going to try to change your mind because you have your own thoughts, but I need to understand why you feel this. I want you to understand why I feel the way I do.
I would like to do an event with you where we would have Combatants for Peace. I know we work together and have...
Right, well, I've had them, when I lived in New York, I had them at my house.
Right.
And Suleiman
I know
Khatib,
Suli, yeah.
so Suli wrote a book.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've seen the book, it's sort of a biography, how it started with his life as a young boy and how he ends up in an Israeli prison.
Yeah,
and his transformation.
as a teenager protesting.
Right, and I think he tried to knife or stab an Israeli, he did something bad.
Defense force.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he ends up in prison, and in prison he learned Hebrew, I think he
Yes.
learned English,
Yeah.
and he read about the Holocaust.
But you know what also
That
is...
changed him.
Yeah, that changed him. But also what's happening, there were reports of Palestinians protesting against Hamas.
Wonderful.
It's wonderful. And so why don't we pick up peace movements among the Palestinians with the Israeli peace movements and show solidarity there? We're not going to break the governments. We're not going to break the Hamas leadership, but we can work with the people, and the great majority of people, both Israelis and Palestinians, want the same thing.
Well, that's what, I just read something very powerful yesterday in the Combatants for Peace website about Palestinians are here to stay, Israelis are here to stay.
Absolutely.
And therefore, we need to talk to each other. And from the river to the sea is not only the Palestinian trope, it's also the settler trope. Mm-hmm. They would like, they believe that Gaza ought to be theirs. There is so...
The greater Israel, right.
Right, exactly. And the greater Israel is also from the river to the sea.
So
we're away from this. So how?
No, we're not away. No, but it's the same.
But it all goes together.
It does go together. Just as back in the 60s, we were trying to grapple with all the forces that were going on, the colonialism, imperialism, racism, and so on and so on.
Part of it is
poverty and so on. So.
Can I say something?
Oh, absolutely.
Semantics,
I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Racism, all this stuff. So much of it, I think, is semantics. That not that it doesn't change anything, but they're trigger words. They're trigger words, and so it triggers a thought or emotion or anger. And to just figure out how do we talk about these words, like oppression or there's a genocide in Gaza. And
on both sides.
Yes, and my partner, the man I live with, said, there's no real and he's very left politically, but you can't call Gaza a genocide. And I said, why not? Mm-hmm. He said, well, genocide is when you specifically set out, like the Holocaust was a genocide because Germans and Nazis specifically set out to get rid of all the Jews. And I said, yes, but Netanyahu wants to get rid of all of Hamas. The problem is every Palestinian is thought to be a member of Hamas, whether they are or not. And so that's a problem. And we like to say what they think and who they are and how every Palestinian hates Israel. I don't believe that's true at all, because certainly I know people who don't feel that way, especially from Combatants for Peace, where people put their lives on the line to do what they do.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. I would, as we move on, I think
So I see.
in so many areas we can work together
I look at
to do
health
what you're talking about.
as a way.
Health,
Health is
yes.
an equalizer. I have a very good friend, and I don't know, I think I asked you about him, Dr. Izzeldin Abuleish, who's a Palestinian doctor from Gaza. And during the second Intifada, the IDF parked a tank outside his house, and he was very well known in Israel. He was the only doctor who was on the staff at Soroka Medical Center in Beersheba, which is 20 miles from Gaza. And he was on the radio a lot. He was very well known. And for some reason, the Israeli army, the IDF, thought that there was some terrorist activity in his house, or there was a terrorist on the roof, and they fired shells into his house, killing 3 of his daughters and a niece. And he wrote a book called I Shall Not Hate, which is why he won't hate Israel. The Israeli government has never apologized to him for what happened, or he started a foundation called Daughters in Life, and he brings together girls, young women from Palestine, Israel, areas of conflict, out of the conflict area, to study, to be together, to work together, and to build community. And
Very important.
and
Very
he looks
important
at the
voice.
world
Yeah.
through a medical lens.
Public health.
Yeah, but also, if something is sick, like our society, then what is sick and how do we make it better? He's strong and tough. He's also very gentle and has a huge heart. So part of how I look at the world is, and what I do is, I can't change the world. I can't even, but I can try to do something that makes a difference in my community here. And that's what we do. And through the Ellen Hermanson Foundation is really what we do is, I believe, taken straight from Ellen's life. When she was as sick as she would sit in the waiting room when she would talk to women and she would mentor women about what they need. She would say, I have you, I have the family, I have a lot of support, and I've had the benefit of education. And not everyone has. So she would she felt with doctors and nurses, she was the Miss Manners of how to be, and she always said the nurses in some ways knew more than the doctors. She said, if you want to know a quick fix for something or how to ask the nurse, because the doctors are good at some things, but not others.
Right. They need to
And she was really,
train too.
and she was quite the advocate. She used her dwindling strength and health to do amazing things. She was the editor of something called the Networker, which is it was a national coalition of cancer survivors, or for cancer survivorship. And she was originally an editor. She actually edited Sylvia Porter's last book and basically ghost wrote the whole book. Though probably no one listening knows Sylvia Porter, maybe, I don't know.
The financial
The financial writer.
writer, yeah.
Yeah, so she did that. And then after she got sick, she wrote a lot of medical reports and year-end reports.
What you're saying is so profoundly important. Each of us here, all that we're people that are watching this, be that sort of person. Whatever field you're in, whatever you're doing,
Can do something.
can do something, and whatever situation we're in, we can make a difference in how we treat people and how we attempt to relate to them. And yeah, you're right. Forget about all the technical terms. We can talk data here. You have the poverty
Well, it
rates.
starts with each of us.
Yeah, each of us.
You know, there's a Center for Conflict Resolution at Teachers College.
Yeah.
And the book is that I was given is like 10 pounds. And you know, there's the macro conflicts that we live in the world, but it starts in a way in our personal lives, the micro conflicts within our personal lives and homes, and how we position ourselves to those. How open are we? How can we listen in those relationships?
And gradually try to get people who are on the outside there looking in and still scared, and make it a welcoming place, in a sense, for people to express themselves. We may not agree and disagree, but we have to do it civilly, and that's not what's happening on campuses. It's not happening in the
Because it's not
society.
setting the ground rules. When I was in
Exactly.
my doctoral program, the professor who is now my very good friend, who was my dissertation sponsor, and she was like made it possible in many ways. We would have difficult conversations. She's African American. We had kids who were, all from every kind of imaginable diversity in the room. And she would say, everything's safe here. What happens in here stays in here, and we're gonna listen. But she set the ground rules about how we have a conversation. Nothing is taboo, especially if it is asked respectfully, because you don't know, and you want to know. And to set, and you can ask anything, and we will listen, and we'll answer you, and we're not going to hold it against you.
We're down to our last minute.
Oh my
and a
God, I'm
half.
so sorry.
Listen, we come back. There's so many things to talk about. I took a course at Teachers College in Black Studies the summer of '68. And it was terrific. But again, get out of your comfort zone and open up your mind.
I'll send it to you. Brian Stevenson, I
Please
heard him
do.
speak. He talked about 4 things that we need to do to make a difference. One is to be proximate. One is to listen. Go out of your comfort zone. I'll send it. He was so brilliant when I heard him speak.
Please do.
And after I read his book, and so it was really important because it's also a template. I think.
For life, generally, for relationships, and in 45 seconds, tell us when Ellen's run is going to be and the gala.
I want everyone to have the
and how to
gala at
contact you.
Bridgehampton Tennis and Surf Club, July 26th.
July
The
26th.
30th annual Ellen's Run at the Intermediate School in Southampton
Is that Sunday?
Sunday, August 17th.
So no traffic problems. You go there.
No, 7 in the morning,
7 in the
nothing,
morning,
nothing.
Sunday.
Clear shot from wherever you're going. And you can reach us at ellenhermanson.org. That's Ellen Hermanson, ELLENHERMANSON.org. And the foundation's phone number is 631-907-1952, and we love to hear from everyone.
Thank you. Julie, we've run out of time.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you so
Thank you
very,
for
very
having
much.
me. This is lovely.
It's wonderful. Thank you so very much.
That was the fastest half hour.
Well, we're going to continue on.
Wow.
And I want to thank everyone for visiting us and viewing this wonderful, beautiful show. We'll see you again on The Radical Imagination, Real Talk in the Hamptons. Thank you,
Thank
Julie.
you for having
Ratner.
me. Wow.
Thank you.